I'm really concerned about the wellness industry and what it's doing to people to create a lot of anxiety around their health and probably causing them to spend a lot of money they don't need to, and actually not really helping people get healthier and feel better. I'm Michelle Brown. I'm a functional nutrition practitioner. I'm a clinical herbalist. So I've been in this health and wellness industry for a while, for about a decade now. And I just see something that I think is a really disturbing trend in the wellness industry. And I want to talk about that and why it matters to you. And then I want to share with you what you really should be focusing on instead to actually be healthy, right? To tap into that healing response of the body where we're turning on our immune function, our hormones are balanced, our energy is balanced, we're able to take energy in from the food that we eat and, remove waste adequately through our detoxification pathways. And when that's happening, that's what I call the healing response of the body. But sometimes we get stuck in these unhelpful pathways that keep us feeling fatigued, gaining weight, feeling achy and tired. Chronic pain often shows up, anxiety, depression, right? And these are really common in our society today, despite the fact that the wellness industry is a multiplied billion-dollar industry that's only growing. So, what's going on, and what's the disconnect between what we're focusing on in our health today and how can we shift this conversation so you can actually be healthy? The thing that I'm really concerned about with the wellness industry is that it creates this disconnection from our body. And let me explain what I mean by that, because so many people are looking for solutions to a lot of those symptoms I just mentioned, like fatigue, weight gain, anxiety, inflammation, and yet they're wanting natural solutions, right? It's what I find a lot of my clients are looking for. They want to know how they can shift their diet or maybe take supplements or support a lifestyle that creates this feeling of just feeling good in our body, right? Where we have energy, we feel balanced, our hormones are balanced, we have good digestion, all those things that we think of as being healthy. But I'm finding that in the wellness industry, I see they're creating this disconnection from the body because there's a lot of advice out there getting thrown around that doesn't actually serve people. And if you don't know how to kind of hear this advice and know whether or not it works for you, it can create a lot of anxiety around your health. It may cause you to do things that aren't helpful for your own body. Just as an example, earlier today, I hopped on YouTube and I was watching this short video from a well-known expert in the wellness industry. And she was saying that you need to eat 40 to 45 grams of protein for breakfast. And it was just a blanket statement, no really caveats around who that's right for or different situations that may apply to. And my problem with that is that number one, it's not right for everyone. I can just tell you as a smaller person that trying to get in 45 grams of protein in the morning would really be a struggle for me. And if you're not digesting protein well, right, which many of my clients aren't, you're not really getting the benefit of eating that much protein. And there can be different reasons why you might want to eat that much protein versus why you might not want to. But if you were just out there on YouTube watching this video and you didn't really know how to interpret that information, it might create this anxiety around, I need to eat more protein. You might get up in the morning and just try to shove down 45 grams of protein, which is quite a lot actually. And you may feel really uncomfortable and bloated, but you just kind of keep pushing through because, you're supposed to eat that much. And I want you to see how that creates this disconnect from your own body and what it needs in the moment to help you feel good and balanced. Because that might work for many people, but there are many people who it will not work well for at all. And the clue here is, how does it feel for you? Does it work for you? Are you getting the results you need? Or is your body telling you that it doesn't work? So again, if you ate that much protein and you felt really bloated or heavy, or maybe you had some aches and pains that showed up, there's some signs there that you may not be dealing with or digesting protein well. And again, you've kind of lost this connection to yourself, to your body and what it needs. And that really is one of the biggest problems that I see happening in the wellness industry. We're just sort of given all of this advice and information. And I see a lot of my clients coming to me who don't really know how to interpret all of these different schools of thought or different approaches that are being put out there. And so we lose this connection with knowing how our own body works well. But the other thing that I see happening is that a lot of the solutions that are out there are also, number one, not right for everyone, but they can also be very, I'm going to use the word invasive, right? Or very expensive in some cases. So I was reading a book recently on just longevity by a very, again, well-known expert in the wellness industry who had a lot of good advice around some dietary and lifestyle type of information. This book was also full of a lot of information around things like injectable peptide therapy and hyperbaric oxygen and all kinds of things that most people may not really find accessible or easy to implement. And as well, a lot of information around wearable devices to track every metric of your health. There's all kinds of devices, right? Even continuous glucose monitors. And sometimes those tools can be helpful. But my problem with that, in addition to being expensive and sometimes a lot of work to implement, they also create some like anxiety and kind of an over focus on health when we're constantly tracking every metric of our healing journey. If you're just relying on a device to tell you if you are, getting enough sleep or you're eating enough or whatever, you're maybe missing out on some important signals the body's telling you. And I train other herbalists in my clinical herbalism program, and one of the main kind of pillars of my program or my approach is learning to read the body because the body is always giving us signals about what is out of balance. And I teach my clinicians or my herbal students how to do that. But really, even as individuals, we can learn how to tap into what is showing up in our body. And again, all of those symptoms that show up from fatigue to anxiety to skin issues to digestive issues, they are signals your body is telling you about what is out of balance. And we need to really tune into that and listen. Because if we don't, we're going to be doing a lot of busy work and maybe spending a lot of money to try to create this picture of health that isn't happening. And I think one of the lies or the core lie of the wellness industry is the more money I spend, the more supplements I take, the more rules I follow, the more this is going to work. And I can tell you, I've had dozens and dozens of clients that I've worked with who can attest that when they came to me, I've had people taking 40 supplements, sometimes more, and they're not well, right? And so, what's the disconnect here? There's almost this sense of anxiety that they have to take all of these supplements to be healthy. And they're really almost afraid that if they don't, they're not going to get better. They're going to just fall apart and they're not going to get to that level of health they want. And yet they're still stuck in these chronic patterns. So if all of this doesn't work, and again, I want to be clear that I'm not saying that supplements are never helpful or important, or that some of these tracking tools or other tools can't be helpful in the right situation. But if we don't actually tune into what our body's telling us, how are we going to actually achieve a true level of health and not just sort of masking symptoms or creating kind of this false security around our health with some of these things that we might be doing? This really brings me back to the idea of resetting our metabolic pathways. Because if our metabolic pathways aren't working well, then it doesn't matter, honestly, how many supplements we take, even how good our diet is in many cases, that we still aren't tapping into that healing response of the body. So, let me give you one quick example of this. You might have heard of insulin resistance, right? Where as we eat too much sugar or carbohydrates, Our blood sugar is going to spike up, and our body sends out insulin to help get that glucose into the cell so we can burn it for energy. But over time, as we eat a high carbohydrate diet, our body can't utilize all of that glucose. And so eventually the cells stop responding to insulin in order to get that glucose into the cell so we can create energy. And when that happens, we start to store glucose instead of burning it for energy. And this often shows up with patterns like weight gain, especially weight gain kind of around the midsection or area of the body, and can also look like fatigue, maybe like getting tired after a meal, because we're just not able to take the food that we're eating and turn it into energy efficiently. And then this creates inflammation in the body and can have a host of downstream effects. But I just want you to see the idea that this one metabolic signaling pathway, our ability to turn food into energy efficiently, can be disrupted. And then we start to see signs of dysregulation, anxiety, fatigue, weight gain, and many other symptoms. Whereas if we look at someone who is insulin sensitive, they are able to take that same meal that the other person who's is not insulin sensitive, and they can actually burn it efficiently for energy, right? So we want to be thinking about how can we shift these metabolic signaling pathways, and that glucose insulin response pathway is just one of many metabolic pathways that we need to support, and it's part of our metabolic flexibility pathway that I help my clients work with. Also, we work on autophagy, we work on downregulating pathways of inflammation, because when we train the body to do this using strategic dietary and lifestyle, different things that go along with that, we can get you to where you're able to start burning food for energy efficiently, extracting nutrients from your meals and turning those into energy. You're digesting well, your hormones are balanced, you are detoxing well, all of those things that tell us that we're healthy. And that's going to show up as balanced mood and energy, and you're going to feel good in your body, which is what we want. So if that makes sense to you, I'd love for you to leave a comment below. I'm really frustrated at seeing people struggle with their health despite spending thousands and thousands of dollars. I've had people come to me who have told me, Michelle, I have spent over $100,000, sometimes more, on their health, and they're still not better. In fact, they're worse, to be honest. And so we need to fix this, right? We need to understand what is out of balance in the body, how to get it back on track. And that's what I teach inside of my program. So download my Mood Fix assessment if you want to get started, because working on your mood is one of the places that I think we can start to get the most momentum in our healing journey. When you're feeling anxious or depressed or just unmotivated, unable to focus, it makes it really hard to make the shifts and the changes and to tune into the signals of the body that are telling us what we need to do next. So go ahead and grab that below, and I will see you next time, because we're going to talk more about this specific topic in some other videos. But I wanted to just get on my soapbox today, really, and share this with you, because there's so much we can do to tap into our body's own healing response and start making the body work the way it needs to. And it doesn't require taking bucket loads of supplements, tracking every metric with wearable devices, or spending thousands of dollars on expensive health equipment to get better. And I want to show you how to do that. So I will see you next time.